everyone. I'm Naomi Firestone Teeter, JBC's Executive Director, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's discussion with David Adjmi, whose captivating memoir, Lot 6, was published yesterday by Harper. As always, we're so appreciative of you joining us here each week to celebrate authors of recently released books, and I hope you will continue to join us for this series. You can find the upcoming lineup in the link that will be in the chat momentarily. Our mission at Jewish Book Council is to educate and enrich the community through Jewish literature. Visit jewishbookcouncil.org to learn about JBC's reviews, essays, and literary journal, Paper Brigade, our book club resources and author tours, and our literary awards, including the National Jewish Book Awards. I hope you will check out all of our programs and resources, and that you might also consider becoming a member to support JBC's continued initiatives. This week, I'm pleased to be the host of today's discussion, along with my colleagues from the Jewish Book Council. This is our 9th installment of our Lunchtime series, and we hope you'll support today's author by purchasing a copy of his memoir, Lot 6, using the link in our chat. On the screen, you can see the JBC team, and we'll all be chiming in with questions during the conversation. If any of you in the audience would like to share your own questions, you're more than welcome. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Also, on the top right of your screen, you have the option to view the discussion in gallery or speaker mode, so please choose whichever one you prefer. With that, I'm excited to properly introduce David Adjmi. David was called virtuosic by the New York Times and was named one of the top 10 in culture by the New Yorker in 2011. His plays have been produced and developed by the Royal Shakespeare Company, Soho Rep, Lincoln Center, Steppenwolf, and many others. Among additional honors, he was awarded a Mellon Foundation grant and the Guggenheim Fellowship, and is the recipient of residencies from the MacDowell Colony, Corporation of Yaddo, American Academy of Rome, and others. Welcome, David. It's such a treat to have you with us here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
How are you, and where are you calling in from today? How are you surviving COVID times and launching a book during COVID times?
I'm surprisingly, shockingly stable, considering everything that's going on. It just feels like a lot of seismic shocks, one after another. And I don't know, maybe my life has prepared me for this moment because I feel surprisingly okay. I'm in LA right now. I live in the Hollywood Hills. So it's kind of quiet here, and that's nice. And it feels like a little bit of a respite. I kind of feel like I'm in the middle of the woods, actually. So it's nice.
That's very nice. I think I have the opposite experience here in Brooklyn right now.
Most people do.
I'm not in the woods.
No, most people are not in the middle of the woods, but I'm very privileged in that I can just like put blinders on and get away from everything. So sometimes I need to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely, especially now. Could you share with our readers a little bit about your memoir, Lot 6, and what compelled you to write it? And as a playwright, why a book rather than a play?
That's a great question. I was compelled to write it because a publisher emailed me on Facebook and said, would you write a memoir for me? I had never thought really of doing a memoir. And I don't really have any experience with long form prose. This is my first attempt at writing long form prose. So I did a play called Stunning at Lincoln Center about 10 years ago. And that play was about the Syrian Jewish community in Brooklyn that I'm from. And a publisher at HarperCollins saw the play and read a profile about me in which I said, I don't know why I said it, that I'd like to write a book. I just thought it was something I should say to an interviewer. I thought it would make me seem really well-rounded or something.
Cultured.
And then, yeah, very cultured and well-rounded. Like I'm a serious person who knows how to write things, not just plays. And so, and then they said, oh, would you actually write one? And I thought, well, no, because I don't really have anything to write about because I'm not really an important or interesting person. And they sort of, I don't know, for reasons that really escape me. I mean, it was a really high-level editor at Harper, and also Jonathan Burnham, who is now the CEO of HarperCollins. At that time, he was the executive editor. I don't know why I don't get it, but it was this mysterious thing that fell into my lap, and it felt kind of like destiny. I really felt it, and I thought, all right, they're asking me to do this. I'm just going to do it. And then it became a very tortuous and torturous experience, and it took me a decade to figure out how to do it. It's really hard to write a book and to do a memoir. And I didn't, and because I wasn't like, dealing with, I wasn't a war veteran, or like I wasn't, abducted by the Symbionese liberation group. I didn't have a particular, like, I wasn't in the Jonestown Massacre. I didn't have a particular angle.
I love that those are your bars, by the way. Like, that's the bar for being able to write a memoir.
But you know what it is? But you know what I'm talking about? It's like when you look at publishing, everything is like this. Everything's in a little box, and it's like, okay, that's what the memoir is going to be. Oh, she has this eating disorder. Oh, he's got this thing. He has that thing. And I didn't really have a sort of easily packageable narrative like that. I didn't think I had a narrative. And so part of what I wrestled with was this idea of having a story that I didn't think I didn't think I was worthy of being, narrativized. And I realized over the course of a decade that actually sort of was my story in a certain way, that like that we need narratives to survive. It's that Joan Didion thing, right? We need stories to live. And I wrote a piece about this recently, and I was like, I didn't really actually believe that. I was like, oh, story. I hate the word story. It just sounds so like, it just sounds so homespun or something, like some Norman Rockwell. Oh, we need a story. But the truth is, if we don't have a hook to hang our lives onto, who are we really? And like, what are we doing? Just floating, like flailing around in space in this existence, right? We need something. And we need a narrative. Now, religion gives you a narrative. I wasn't grafting onto that. And so it's like I had to figure out, like, who am I? And that became the subject of my book, actually. So my book is sort of about, it became about a person that feels very much on the outside of the dominant culture and systems and structures that are supposed to inform a person, but didn't inform me. And I was trying to find myself in these other remote satellite systems and structures that I called culture. And it's about like kind of this weird, the stuff that felt native to me, that was native to me, didn't feel native to me. It felt alien. And the stuff that was out there seemed to glimmer with something familiar that was unformed in me and for which I had no vocabulary or language. And so the book is kind of about this very atomic, granular dissection of how I started to piece together the elements of a self and then parlayed that into my life as an artist.
Fantastic. And obviously the editors saw the right thing in you, because your book was brilliant. I absolutely loved it, and our entire team loved it. And I'm very excited for our readers to get a chance to dig in. So before I have you read a little bit from the book, I was hoping you could set the stage a little bit, set the scene, and tell us a little bit about your family and I hate to say characters, but the characters who are in your world at the point in the book that you're about to read.
So I come from this this community, this small-ish sort of offshoot of Jews, right? The Sephardic Jews. This particular group is the Syrian Sephardic Jews of Midwood in Brooklyn. I think it's about 20 or 30,000 of us, so it's really pretty small. And I mean, Isaac Mizrahi is from this group. I guess there are others. It's mainly a lot of people who owned jeans companies and electronic stores. That's what I grew up knowing about. And so it was sort of very conservative, kind of Republican. I was sent to a Jewish yeshiva that was both Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews. And it was called the Yeshiva. Well, I don't think I could say because I'll get sued. But anyways, I went to this school. Well, that's what my lawyer told me. So I went to this school, and it was just really harsh. It was a very intense place. I didn't like it. I didn't get on with my rabbis and everything. But and so this is, I think, in my sophomore year of high school. Oh, hi, Gail. I'm seeing things happening. Okay. So I started to really question things. I just remember taking a Jewish philosophy class, and they were just like, "Shut up," like it really was. It was like Jewish philosophy. They wouldn't really engage me, and I was not someone to not be engaged. I was gonna really like dig in there, and they just hated me. Anyways, I started to really reject the whole thing, and I was like, maybe I'm just an atheist and forget all this. And so I started to experiment with atheism, and I felt, in the book I talk about falling into the gutters of people's assumptions about me. Like, when you're stuck in an environment where people just think, that you are a certain way just because everybody is that way, and they're going to see you in that optic field. They're going to situate you there. And I was like, I've got to get out of this, you know. I felt like it was like flypaper. It's just like, get off me. I gotta be me. I don't know who that is, but I've got to be something, not what you're telling me I am. And so this is sort of, and, you know, and my family was really into this. They were religious, and they were sort of flirting with religion. You know, they were kind of like fair weather Jews in a certain way, but they did all the high holy days and stuff like that. And so, is that good? Did I
Yeah,
do
that's
it?
great. That's good. You
Okay.
did it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of like in the beginning of this was my big moment where I'm like, okay, I'm going to show everybody, and I'm going to do something to declare my independence. At the start of 10th grade, when it was Yom Kippur and everyone else was fasting, I exhorted myself to go to an Italian restaurant on Coney Island Avenue. I'd never broken a fast before, and this was the highest of holy days. It was the most profane you could get. Maybe once I desacralized it, the vestigial grip religion had on me would be broken. The waiter seated me at a table with a little carnation, a tiny wick floating in liquid paraffin. I ordered a baked ziti. When it came to the table, I forced it, hands trembling, shivering with terror, forkful by blasphemous forkful into my mouth. I chewed, I swallowed. I wasn't hungry, but I cleaned the plate and felt sick immediately. I paid the bill, also a sin, you weren't supposed to carry money, and walked to the subway station on East 16th Street, the undigested brick of ziti weighing me down like an anchor. I took the train, also a sin, to the Benetton near Astor Place, where in my altered state, I settled quickly on some sweater. I didn't even try it on. I was too anxious and had a stomach ache. Paid for it, hopped back on the Q train to Brooklyn, and to make a very deliberate point of my apostasy, walked the streets of Midwood with my Benetton bag. I loped in arrogant strides down East 8th Street, waiting for someone, anyone, to confront me about my Benetton sweater. I couldn't wait to tell them their lives were all bullshit. But in a harrowingly immediate fulfillment, like a phantasm or wraith I'd summoned, there, walking toward me from the opposite end of East 8th Street, were Richie and my mother. Richie's my brother. Richie and my mother dressed in their high holy finest. My mother wore her great blouse with the sash at the neck. Richie was in his Armani tweed. Instantly, I regretted my bravado. I was able to make out quite clearly the shift in my brother's expression once he eyed my bag. And now I had to walk the interminable length of the sidewalk to reach them. It was like walking to my death. Once we were face to face, Richie bore a hole in me with his gaze, his eyes small and black like a hermit crab. You went to Benetton? Yes, I replied with shaky defiance. You went to Benetton on Yom Kippur? Don't you believe in God? My brother's temper intimidated me. He'd punched that hole in the kitchen wall. He'd once tracked down and threatened to beat the crap out of a delivery guy for getting his order wrong. He might physically attack me right in the middle of East 8th Street. But I had to talk back to him, for I knew in that moment that freedom wasn't merely a choice, it was a commitment, something you fought to have. No, I said, my heart now pounding in my ears. I don't believe in God. You're disgusting, said my brother. He repeated the word disgusting for emphasis, and then, once he'd given me the requisite glare to punctuate unambiguously his utter disgust with me and my inexpiable failure as a Jew, as a person and Jew, he made a volte-face, while my mother, who often just accepted whatever violence, real or intimated, men wrought, made some boilerplate condemnation of me and my lifestyle and walked off to soothe Richie's hurt feelings. I was determined to follow through with the actions I'd penciled in for the day, so I resumed my symbolic walk through the streets of Midwood. With every step, I felt a new surge of contempt for my brother's pat moralism. He wasn't even really religious. He just wanted to tick off the boxes of moral goodness. He was like my father, conformist and unthinking. I didn't care if I shamed him or the family or my mother with her fickle pantheism, her secret cache of daily words in the drawer of the end table. They were all hypocrites. Hypocrisy was all around me. It was an ether, a poison. It was something I had to actively fight, or I'd be lulled into its seductive slumber. But I didn't know what I was fighting for. I finally found the strength to reject things, but I couldn't find anything to fill the vacuum left by their absence. I didn't have a belief system. I found a bench on Ocean Parkway and took my sweater out of the bag. It looked and felt cheap. I knew I'd never wear it. There were some old men nearby, idly shuffling decks of cards. I sat and watched them. I contemplated my fate until the sun started to go down. I watched the sun bathe the tall bricked buildings in its waning light until we were all caught in its clambering shadow. That's it.
Yeah, we're clapping.
Ah.
You talk about the idea of a belief system, which weaves its way through the book in different ways. Can you explore how that concept of belief evolved throughout your childhood, teenage, and college years? I know it has a different role depending on the moment you're in, but
That's such a great question. I think it's in some ways the big question of this book. You know, when I was younger, I think like I grew up in a family where what was presented to me as real or as something to strive for never fully took. It just never felt convincingly presented to me. And so I was always sort of looking, I feel like I have like this gnomic sort of tendency or like this tendency towards occult things. And I was always looking for something secret or hidden. Like I believed like, you know, in depth models, right? To use a phrase, right? That, oh, here's reality, but there's something else underneath it. And I want to understand it because I think that that's a correlative to something that lives inside of me that I need to unlock. And so I think in the beginning, it was like, you know, I would like look at like Superman and think like, oh, I want to be able to do that. I want to learn how to fly. I mean, talk about the book in the book about watching films like Escape to Witch Mountain and thinking like I could do telekinesis. You know, I was sort of trying to unlock some sort of power. Then when I went to my yeshiva, um, they were trying to get me to believe in things that I was like, they just were not good salespeople to me. They couldn't do it. They just didn't have the goods. And so I was like really wanting to get into it actually, because I have this deep spiritual hunger. Like I couldn't call it that, but I had that. And I was like, tell me something to like get me into this, like hook me, like pitch it to me. But they really couldn't do it. And the sort of, it just felt like it was kind of, and I think that there were a lot of traumatized people in my school, like these teachers. A lot of them were either Holocaust survivors or they were sort of ambient, like around that. They were traumatized. So I think there was like a sort of, I don't know, I couldn't fit in. And I felt that deeply. And it was like a source of real heartbreak to me because I really wanted to believe. So I struggled all through like high school with this feeling of like, do I believe in this? Is this real? Is this true? Is this going to ever unlock something in me? And then I gave up on believing in anything. And I think for a while, I just became kind of like obsessed with appearances. You know, I thought after this point in the book, I was just like, you know what? I just want to get currency. I just want people to admire me. And I just want to be this worldly, shallow, successful, in quotation marks, person. And it really wasn't until I found art, but really found it and was able to connect to not just theater, but all art. That I like began to awaken spiritually, actually, and writing for the theater, but it happened by accident, kind of. It was something I backed myself into. Like when I started to write plays, I didn't think I was going to do deep plays. I just wanted people to like me and think I was funny and cute and nice. You know what I mean? I just wanted to have like just leave me alone. I'm just going to go over here and make you laugh and entertain you. And then I'm just, you know, I'll get old and that'll be my life and that's fine. And actually what happened was I had a reckoning with my own conscience as I was working on these plays. And I realized that this was not what was inside of me. Like something deeper was yearning to come out. And just the practice of writing plays, like it loosened something in me. And when I saw plays as a kid, because I did see them, because I grew up in New York, I felt bits of that too. Like there was something awakened inside of me, but in flashes. And it was sort of like my life trajectory was like figuring out how to put all this stuff together. And then I think the becoming a writer for me was the synthesis of it. So it was a spiritual epiphany for me to become a playwright. And the theater is really the place. Theater and religion, going back to the Abydos Passion play, and the Greeks obviously in the Festival of Dionysia. It was always about worship, and always linked to the divine. So in a way, it makes sense.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the JBC team for a minute. I know they have a bunch of questions, and make sure I get a few of those in.
Hi, David. I'm Evie. I'm the program director here, and we chatted. But reading the book, you learn about the term Lot 6, which you give your memoir its name. And many in the audience may not be familiar with the term. So do you think you could explain it and like why it was the title of your book?
That's a great question. Sorry, yes. So Lot 6, so in the Sephardic Syrian Jewish community, it's a very insular community, and it's a very sort of clubbish, tight community. They have their own slang. They have their own terminology. And a lot of stuff is tied into, I guess, capitalism, business, so like, because they're capitalists. And so in any case, when I grew up, like in the 80s, especially, a lot of people had those, those camera and electronic stores flanking Midtown, like in the 30s and the 40s. Those were really big. I don't even know if they exist anymore because of Amazon, but my brothers both worked in stores like that. And yes, B&H or B and something. So they had, so in order to do their work, right, they didn't want to put prices on the cameras and the electronics, because they wanted to figure out how to like work their angles and get as much money as they could from the tourists. So they would put what was called lot numbers on the, like, little stickers on the backs of the electronic stuff, and they would encode the wholesale price of the item in the lot number. So, and it was always doubled, right? So if it, like, lot 6 was 3, and 3 meant queer and odd, and that was the sobriquet that they gave to gay people back in the 70s and 80s. And so, it was not like a really nice term. It was just, those were the mores, that was the time. And so my book really, I think, like, I wasn't going to call my book Lot 6. I don't know. It's not even really a book about being gay. It is about that because I am that, but it's not really about that. It actually is more about the feeling of exile and the feeling of the loneliness of not really fitting in the world. And it is a loneliness, I think, specific to artists and just like weirdos. I'm a bit of a weirdo. Like, I can't like wave my banner as part of some tribal identity and be like, here I am, because I don't really fit into these tribal groups in a certain way. I feel a little bit like, on my own. But I think in writing the book, what I realized is that is actually kind of a privileged position in a certain way. And I do believe that the margins are sacred. And I do believe that people who are really marginal, if they can express themselves and like use their voices, which I was afraid my whole life to do, that these people can be really valuable to society. And so I think my book became kind of like an homage to the people like me who don't think they can do anything or don't think they fit in anywhere and don't want to use their voices because they're afraid of their voices, because they don't feel their voices are representative of anything. And so that's why I called the book that.
David, in the 10 years since you wrote the play Stunning about your community, do you think anything has changed in the Syrian community? And do you think that the response to your book will be similar to the response to Stunning, which you mentioned before?
Well, so to answer your first question, I don't know, because I'm so disarticulated and detached from that community that I don't exactly know. I feel like women, I think it's gotten a little bit better in the sense that I know that women get to go to college now. And because you know, I'm very close with my sister's daughter, my niece, and she sort of has she's also broken away and done her own thing, and she's a therapist now. But she told me that no, it's a little bit more progressive in that way because women used to be married or engaged like in high school sometimes. Like I remember when I was in school, people were already getting engaged, and the whole function of women was just get married and have a baby and blah blah blah. That appears to be changing, and which is great. I don't know if it's less homophobic. I'm guessing probably not, but I don't know. And in terms of the reception, I don't think this book is really so much that play. You know, I wrote that play not thinking anyone was going to ever do it because I'm so marginal. This community is so marginal. Nobody knows what it is. Like, who's going to put this play on? No one. And I just thought, like, I don't care. I'm just going to do this for myself as like a joke. And my Aunt Jerry will come with a flashlight and we'll do it in my mother's garage. I really thought like, this is going to be my, you know, the result. And actually then Lincoln Center came and said, oh no, we want to put it on. And then I didn't realize until we started production and previews that like, oh my God, all these Syrian Jews suddenly started filing into the theater. And I was like, oof, because it's a very harsh play. But I felt badly actually, because I didn't mean to do this indictment of this group that's not really represented in the culture, but I wanted to get my feelings out when I was writing it. So it was actually a strangely tense, not delicious moment for me in a certain way. I mean, a lot of great things happened because of that play. This book is not, this book I'm more concerned about my family reading it because I think it's incredibly revealing and raw, and it was very hard for me to write it. And I didn't want to write it. And again, I felt like backed into a corner the way I did writing Stunning, where I was suddenly like, oh no, what have I done? You know what I mean? And with this, it's like, when Jonathan Burnham and my editor at the time said, do you want to do a book? We came up with like an intellectual conceit, like, oh, we'll write about 10 figures from culture that influenced you. Okay, great. I can write these little essays, you know, I'll write about this person and that artist and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, okay, I can make an academic book and everyone will think I'm really smart and great. And then of course, because I'm me, that wasn't gonna cut the mustard. And so I was like, okay, no, I have to really do this. And I believe memoir is testimony. And I believe that a memoirist is somebody who needs to share his or her experience in order to, it's a public service, right? It's like, I'm here to tell you what it was like to be me and to live this life. And maybe that will be useful to people. And so I had to be honest. But in doing so, I feel like I had to write about things that made me very uncomfortable. So I'm worried. They haven't really read it yet. No one's read it. My niece has read it, but no one in my immediate family has read it yet. So I don't know. I told them not to read it. I told even though I dedicated it to my mother, I said, don't read it. But I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see.
Thank you so much for sharing, David. I'm so sad, but we've run out of time and we have so many more questions and I see so many audience questions. So we're gonna send them to you later and hopefully you can give us some more answers that we can share with them later. But we really appreciate you being with us here today. The link is in the chat to Lot 6. Everyone should buy a copy of the book, go out and read it, and join for other discussions that you'll be participating in. And join us here next week for our conversation with Scott Shea. We'll see you soon. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.